Welcome, and thank you for the opportunity to provide an overview of some of the benefits associated with our simulation, Entrepreneurship the Game. As you will see during the next few minutes, there are many benefits to your students while supporting your efforts in class. Let's begin by discussing the benefits to your students. The major benefits to your students are twofold. First of all, employ gamification into your course. That is a teaching medium that is different than the standard modes of operation that we currently employ. In addition to that, it allows the students to have hands-on experience, experiential learning. And these are two very, very important elements that will provide the students with a support and supplement to your teaching, supplement to the tools you're using in class that will allow them and effectively to immerse themselves in a business environment and employ the concepts that you are showing and discussing with them. This essentially is a supplemental learning process that you incorporate into your class to provide them with, if you will, another mode of discussing the same concepts, another mode, another practice, if you will, a repetitiveness. So the key is there are many benefits to the students. Most importantly, it is that they are able to immerse themselves in a business environment and essentially apply the knowledge that you have been giving them in a real-world situation. Let's take a look at the primary concepts illustrated in the simulation. As you can see, there are many different components. Effectively, the simulation covers product design, market selection, marketing, that is advertising, creating ad campaigns, and cash flow. It also includes items such as inventory control, more deeper analysis, sales versus cost to give an idea of gross margin, the effectiveness, gap analysis as they proceed through the simulation. But basically, the simulation is geared for the student to create a product, to determine the value proposition of the product, to determine the acceptance of that product by the market, and then adjust the cost, if you will, the retail price, to impact the sale of that product. They also want to make sure that when they forecast the number of units they're going to sell, they understand the concepts that excess inventory will cost them storage costs. So inventory management is part of the analysis. They need to look at the cash flow. As a startup, they typically will have cash flow needs, source and uses of funds that will take place. In terms of the 7 P's as I've defined it, they incorporate price. They have to analyze the price. The suggested list price is given for their design product, but they have to decide, do they want to sell lower or do they want to sell higher than that price? And again, that depends upon the market. The placement, those are the 3 out of 5 markets that the student can select. Now, a student can select only one market to pursue. That's their decision-making process. And then, associated with the ad campaigns that are created, they then promote the product, and they have to then project how many units are going to be sold. We do not have packaging and product naming in the simulation. I didn't believe that would give us much value. But there is gap analysis, ad effectiveness, a marketing mix, understand the different mediums that one would use to pursue a market. Market analyses, for example, the impact of promotional budgets to make the population aware of the capabilities and features of the product. And then we also include an HR factor, where one can invest in human resources. The impact of those human resources are obviously improvement in sales, efficiency in operation, but there is a drawback. There's, if you will, salary. And lastly, we do have, as part of the source and use of funds, and we'll get to see some of these screens in a few moments, the management of capital and common stock. So essentially, the simulation is providing them with the managerial experience one would expect to have in a typical startup business. And as you could see, there are a number of different elements in the simulation that relate back to this process. Basically, product design, marketing, cash flow. And so this is the content. Once you see the screens and the approach and the process that the student undertakes in the simulation, you'll get a much better idea of how these concepts, these topics are reinforced. Align this with your course and you have a idea of how you can integrate the simulation into your curriculum, into your actual course material. One point in time, do you want them to pursue this? At one point in time, do you want each of the quarters, as we will discuss, to be processed, and so on? When you create the game, you will be able to select from a series of generic elements or pre-created vertical industry elements. You can then further customize these elements to a scenario of your own choosing. So for example, the features, generic features that you'll see are features 1, 2, 3 through 20. One of the vertical markets is software, where we talk about mainframe computers, COBOL, and so on. Your markets can be business, commercial, consumer, for example. In general, the generic, they're called markets 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So you can, if you will, customize a simulation to meet your specific area of interest or points that you wish to convey to the student. The idea behind it is you don't have to do this, but if you so desire, you have complete 100% flexibility in the elements associated with the game. To get a better idea of what we are referring to when we speak about elements, here for example is a portion of the student product design screen. As you can see from the call-out boxes, there are a number of interesting components. This happens to be a vertical industry set of elements, obviously because we're looking at under products, for example, COBOL, or we're looking under networks and so on. So the idea behind it is this is one of the vertical industries that you can employ when you create a game. And there are a number of other ones. When you go into the system, you're able to review and decide which you're interested in. Now remember, whether you create a game using the generic features, which we'll see an example of in a few moments, or you use one of the design verticals, you can always go in and modify every aspect of those parameters that are associated with it. So let's take a look at this screen. We'll discuss this a little more in detail later on, but just so you get an idea of what we are referring to when we talk about features, ad plans, and markets. On this screen, we see two of those elements. We see the features of a particular that can be incorporated into a particular product, and we see the various markets that the student can select to sell their product into. Now, what are the parameters associated? Well, first of all, a feature has a name, so you can design or give it whatever name you choose. It could be called feature 1, it could be called, item 1, whatever it is you have decided is appropriate for your class. Or you can just employ the generic or the chosen vertical and essentially do nothing. The next two components represent the cost and the suggested retail. Now these numbers are all randomly created when you create the generic, or they are pre-entered in the vertical industry versions. You, however, may be interested in emphasizing a certain type of gross margin. You may have been discussing with students a particular industry where the GM may be, much lower than normal. Well, then you can actually come in here and adjust these numbers. You can come in and change the cost and change the suggested retail to be whatever values you are. The second set of numbers that you see here represent the value proposition. Now, the value proposition in the simulation is a number from 0 to 7. And again, these are randomly generated for generic games, and they are pre-entered for industry-specific vertical games. But the 0 implies that that particular feature has no value in the market. A 7, on the other hand, implies that that particular feature is highly valued in that selected market. So one of the things that you could do is you could take a feature, for example, and in our screen example that we show you here, the markets are called large business, small business, mid-sized business, and you can design and say, for example, COBOL has a 7 in large business and has a value of 0 in mid-sized businesses. What does that mean? That means to the student, if they create a product that incorporates COBOL, if they intend to sell to the mid-sized business market, it's going to be of 0 value. So they're not going to be interested in this product. On the other hand, if they decide to sell to a large business environment, then it is going to be highly acceptable because of the value 7. So you can come in and change the parameters. In this case, this represents the features. You can come in and change the parameters associated with each and every feature. You can change the name of each and every feature and so on. In addition to that, you also can define the name of the market. In this case, it's called large business, small business, mid-sized business, personal, commercial. You can call it whatever you want: small, medium, large, grand, minor, whatever it is you feel is appropriate. And then again, you don't have to change anything. You can use the generics, for example, which is market 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, or you can use the predefined verticals. So when we talk about you providing a customization aspect to the simulation, we're referring to you changing, if you will, the name of the feature. We're talking about the cost and retail, and, if you will, the value proposition for that feature in each and every one of the markets. This may seem like a labor-intensive task. It's not. The system has been designed with an easy-to-use, intuitive interface. And as you can see from the screen that is presented, this is the revision screen for you to customize the features, the price, the cost, and value proposition of each and every one of those features. You merely go in and rekey in the name of the feature, change the numerical values as you see fit, and enter the value proposition, a number between 0 and 7. The key is for you to determine, why am I interested in changing the generic, or why am I interested in changing the vertical, and that will then dictate to you what changes need to be made. Are you interested in creating an apparel model? Are you interested in creating a service model? Are you interested in creating a manufacturing model? The key behind it is the simulation is geared to allow you to customize it as you see fit to enhance your content, your course, your student interaction with the simulation itself. It's been designed so you don't have to do anything and allow the flexibility of the system via the generic nature or the predefined vertical industry parameters to essentially allow the student to employ the simulation in a business environment. Computer science students, you may want to use our electronic vertical industry. Students in an automotive or civil engineering students, for example, you may want to use our automotive. You may want to look at our apparel. So the key behind it is the decision is yours. And if you decide you wish to customize some or all, it is very easy to do so. If you elect to create a game with generic parameters, in this case, here is an example of generic features, you will see the features are noted 1 through 20. There is a cost, there is a suggested retail, and there is a value proposition associated with each of these features. So in creating a generic game, you can then go in and modify as you see fit any one of these elements and components. So you can deal with a specific vertical if you so desire. You can select a generic as your baseline, and then in all cases you can customize the game as you see fit. You would employ the same approach to customizing the advertising plans and the markets and corresponding market populations. So for example, in the advertising plan, you may decide to incorporate television and radio. And in one case, the effectiveness of television in a particular market is 0. In the other case, radio is an effectiveness of 7. Just like the value proposition, the effectiveness indicates how effective that advertising plan is in the designated market and has a value from 0 to 7. 0 meaning no effectiveness whatsoever. That is, no population awareness will take place with spending promotional dollars, whereas 7 implies you'll be getting the most effective usage of your promotional dollars. In terms of the markets, you would designate the market populations for both quarters 1, 2, 3, and 4. This allows you to create, if you will, a growth market where quarter 1 has a certain number, quarter 2 is greater, 3 is greater, 4 is greater. Or you could possibly create a contracting market where quarter 1 is a specific number, quarter 2 is less, 3 is less, 4 is less. Or you can create an up and down recession type growth market where you combine these various aspects. The decision is yours. If you want to provide the student with a purely growth market, well, you can create that. On the other hand, you can create a contracting. One of the particular markets is contracting. And so in your discussions to students when they perform a market analysis, you would be able to emphasize market X is a growth market, market Y is a contracting market, market C is a random market. And this will then allow you, as with the features and with the ad plans, to customize as you desire. However, it's important to remember there's really no need, unless you wish to do so, to modify either a generic game or a vertical game. Lastly, you can control the capital constraints of the game. For example, you can limit the amount of personal bank account funds available to the entrepreneur, to the student. You can limit the amount of commercial loans. You can limit the amount of shares of stock that are being issued. You can limit the amount of HR expense. So you have the ability to control the difficulty or ease. So you may allow $100,000 in commercial loans. You may allow them to sell 10,000 shares of stock per quarter. The decision is yours depending upon the environment you wish to create. A more difficult environment would obviously reduce these numerical values, these constraints. A more lenient environment would create greater numbers. So as you create this game, and it is important to remember, these changes to features or markets or populations or capital items all can be changed at any quarter. They don't have to be changed at the beginning of quarter 1. They can be changed in quarter 2 if you wish to make adjustments or modifications. They can be changed in quarter 3. So as you monitor your students in the game, their success and failures, you may find that in this case, capital constraints have been set too lenient, too high, so therefore it's easy for them to borrow money. You may wish to reduce that for the next quarter. And in doing so, provide the students with a more difficult situation where they have to now go back to the concepts that you've been teaching them to ascertain how best do I handle it. And as you have seen, the decision to modify is yours. You can create a generic or vertical game and then customize it as you see fit. You have control over the game that your students will play. At this point, you may be wondering, well, now that I've created the game and I've modified the features or employed the standard generic features or vertical market features, how is the game processed? Well, very simply, the game is made up of 4 quarters. And as you will see when reviewing the student process, that the student goes in, as we've discussed, makes decisions in product design, makes decisions in marketing, makes decisions in cash flow, and then the quarter gets processed. Well, how does the quarter get processed? Well, when you create the game, you will designate the 4 quarterly periods. Now, these periods can be manually processed. That is, you can go in and process them on that date, before that date, after that date, however you choose, since it is manual. Or you can configure it to be automatic, which means at 11:59 on that date, 11:59 p.m. on that date, the simulation will run and the students will now be in the next quarter. So you can determine when these are based on how you plan to incorporate the simulation into your class, into your course schedule. You now can process this. Some people process 2 runs over a 3-day period and do that 1 week and do it a second week. Other individuals have scheduled this out as 1 quarterly to be processed on a weekly basis over a 4-week period. Others have actually processed it over a 4-day period. So the decision is really yours, and it is more important to understand that that decision is related to the content you are teaching, your schedule, and how you've designed your course. Do you want to have these topics all appear during a certain period of time? Do you want them spread out? So basically, your decision to create the quarterly deadlines, if you will, are based on where you place the simulation, when it starts, when it's finished. There are other aspects as well. The grading can be based on number of points per quarter. Many individuals have graded the training process, that is the learning process students go in, as an incentive to give them the concept to go ahead and spend some time understanding the decisions that they're going to make and reward them for making that effort. That is all based on your criteria and how you wish to incorporate it. But very simply, the quarters are processed either manually or automatically. Manually means you process them on that date, before that date, after that date, whatever your decision cycle happens to be, or automatically, which means the system will automatically update them as well. Training videos for your students are on the website under the Training tab. Under that tab, you will also find a series of videos that show you many of the concepts that we have discussed, how to go about revising the information, creating a game, how to export the data from a game to Excel spreadsheets, and so on. In addition, on our website, you will see there's a community blog which allows interaction between the students, the faculty, and other members of our community, as well as a presentation site, a link to a presentation site. That site contains information on what I believe to be a viable and feasible approach to crafting business communiques. As noted on the website, the licensing cost is $26.99 per student. The students can purchase this individually on the website as they register for the game, or the university may elect to purchase a specific number of licenses and provide those to the students. Again, let me thank you for providing us with this opportunity to discuss the features and benefits of entrepreneurship, the game. At this time, you may want to review the student decision cycle to gain a perspective on the process they will follow. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us by phone or email. Again, thank you for your time.